What's up, everybody? Welcome to Omnic Lab. We are the Overwatch Strategic Podcast in your earbuds today, and we're going to be focusing this week on the Overwatch League Finals between the London Spitfire and the Philadelphia Fusion. And yes, there will be spoilers on episode 113 of the Omnic Lab. Just remember, we are talking about this in a strategic sense. If you're looking for like player highlights and specifics, we're going to be trying to frame this in more of a hero picking, team composition, team play type of environment, more so than highlighting individual players. We're talking more about the play itself. There will be overlap with our other sister show, the Owl Recap, where you can see Andres yet again, as you'll be seeing him this week. Welcome to the show. My name's Rob, and Andres, how was your weekend?
Hey. Oh, man, it's been a crazy weekend, man. It was my first time up in New York, so starting with that, it was already pretty crazy for me. But I got to experience the Overwatch League Finals live, which was super awesome. We've been pretty much building up to this moment for like 2 years now, basically. So it was a pleasure getting to watch it. It lived up to the expectations for sure. It did not disappoint. The event itself was super well organized. Production was top notch. You can nitpick things here and there. You know, a lot of people were nitpicking about the live act, for example. But I thought that overall it went really well, and it was just amazing watching so many Overwatch fans just in one place. Everyone was just wearing the jersey, so when you would go out on the street, you could like recognize your people. You would see like Gladiator shirts, New York Excelsior shirts, Houston Outlaws just walking everywhere in bars and restaurants, and it was grabbing the attention of everyone. You know, like people would be coming up to us and asking like, "Hey, what's all those jerseys about that everyone's wearing?" And we'll be like, "Oh man, it's a Overwatch League. You should check it out."
Wouldn't you like to know?
Yeah.
Only the biggest thing in esports in New York City today.
I was actually able to convince my Uber driver to try Overwatch because when he picked me up, he started asking me why I was there.
Sure.
And I told him about Overwatch League, and I was trying to explain to him, you know, like the magnitude of the event and that was happening at the Barclays Center. And at first he was kind of like, you know, disbelief, like, "Oh, so is that big? So what's the game about?" And then I explained to him what the game was about, and he was like, "Oh, okay." And then I started explaining the story about the game. By the end of the ride, he was super excited about Overwatch, and he was like, "You know, I'm really gonna try this game, man. No, seriously, I'm gonna try it." It was really fun.
Awesome. Well, not only was the weekend great, but it's just got a little bit better from Mr. Sadistic giving us a Twitch Prime sub during the show this week. So thank you for that. If you guys want to support the show, the best way to do that is through Twitch Prime and through Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, we have a couple announcements regarding our sponsorships for this week's episode. This week we have a returning sponsor again, Top Score Solutions from Ben, aka I Need Peeling, offering free business consultation in esports. If you're aspiring to be a coach, starting a team, developing an app of service, or you want to boost your sub base, just want to work in esports in general, all of these things, you can visit his website, Top Score Solutions, or find him at Twitter, Top Score Esports. He also has a link to his Discord there. Ben's got a master's in sports management, as well as finance and data analytics, and will have lots of experience in sales, marketing, and company development. His services are free, and they will stay that way as long as the demand allows. So get on it and do it while you still can. I'm still coaching. I just got word, actually, some bad news this week or last week. One of my players got something. I had a ton of stuff stolen and is kind of like working
Oh
through
no.
some insurance stuff. But yeah, it's a big issue, and he's gonna come back. He'll be fine. But the Overwatch Open, actually linked to this, has their signups open now as of this week. You guys can sign up for your Overwatch League Open teams and try to claim your crown and get
Oh,
some
that's
notice
cool.
for those contender slots.
I've been wanting to do it. I haven't been able to put a team together for it, and honestly, it's a big commitment because it's the whole weekend, so it's hard for me to do. But I want to do it one
Mm.
day. I want to get my ass kicked in there.
Yeah, it's all for the experience. So I'm hoping my guys can put together their roster and set aside some weekends time for it, because that time commitment and just enduring the schedule of a tournament is
Yeah.
awful. So Shout out to my guys, the Platt Pilgrims out there. Hopefully they can get stuff put together. It's funny because our team name is Platt Pilgrims, and they're a bunch of like low
Grandmasters.
GM, high Masters players, like really good players. But speaking of interesting things, we have Red Steak Sauce Podcast returning again as another sponsor this month. Is the only podcast that's conceived as a comedy variety show, and then they turned it into an entertainment news show the moment that Matt hit the record button in Audacity. So you can join Matt and Ryan as they navigate through briny, oversaturated depths of gaming, movies, and miscellaneous entertainment news, while occasionally messing around with some Lego stuff that Matt leaves lying around. They talk about pretty much everything. They talked about Destiny. They talk about Infinity War. They talk about all kinds of crazy things. And Matt just sent me the new episode this week from SoundCloud that I'm going to be checking out this week. To kind of they did some new revamp. They have some really cool stuff coming in from Homestar Runner. They got a fresh interview for some updates with regards to that. So you can find them at redsteaksauce.net. That being said, we have no new updates from Omnic Meta, but we did talk with Switch this week, and he said he's got something in the works. So definitely take a look at omnicmeta.com if you want to go check out some things to see our good friend and yours, as well as our official partner of the Omnic Lab there. Let's get into the meat and potatoes, shall we? We have some really cool stuff to talk through with the Overwatch League finals. Now, if for those of you unengaged with Overwatch League and just playing the game for the sake of strategy and getting improvement, not only do we recommend these games, but we want to give a little bit of context. So with Overwatch League, traditionally they play a total of 5 maps for a best of 5 maps. So first person to 3 wins. And if there is a draw, then you keep playing because there are enough maps so that there will be 3 wins no matter what happens, right? Or there will be somebody with 2 wins and somebody with a draw and then somebody with a 1 win. So it'll be somewhere around the line somebody can win. Okay. However, Andres is muted, so I'm going to keep talking. So we have the day 1 and day 2 for the finals. They actually have to play a series of best of 3 sets. So you have a match 1, best of 3, and then you have a day 2, you have a best of 3 again. And then if both of those are 1-1, then they play another series kind of after lunch. They'll have an afternoon session to almost like a matinee performance round 3 to finally crown the winner.
That's right. It's almost like a tennis match, right? Where you have sets and you have games inside of the sets. And sometimes you play several sets. In this case, you play 3 sets of best of 5 games. If one team is able to get the first 2 sets, then you don't actually have to play the third one. That team just automatically wins, like it was the case in this finals. But aside from that, yeah, it's a best of 3 sets.
And so you're probably wondering, well, what maps did they play? Well, we're going to get into that kind of one at a time, and then we're going to break down what was the typical general compositions and then how were those modified throughout the day or throughout the series. So if you're unaware, both of the teams have set up a 2-2-2 as far as what the players are known for and then make adjustments on that. So they typically will have 2 support players. One of them will be a main healing support traditionally, Mercy and Moira and Ana. Those will be those type of things that they'll play. And then the other person will play is Zenyatta, Lucio, or a Brigitte. And the crazy thing that we've been seeing in these new series is that Brigitte has actually been shuffled over to the flex DPS slot. So we'll actually see a DPS player end up switching over to Brigitte because usually when you're playing it, you're running it as a third option on the healing slot to have a little bit more tanky kind of brawl pressure on the point for stalling and defending. And then there's 2 tank players. But Andres, you want to have anything here you want to kind of break down for more of the basics before we get in here?
Sure. I just wanted to talk about this general observation because I think that you're touching it already, and I really like that. And it's how some of the positions have been established so far in the league. Up to this point, it's kind of been building up to it. And at this point, the state of the meta, at least with this patch, some of the positions, like you said, have been pretty flexible in that sense. And you have guys like your off DPS switching to the Brigitte while you still continue with this main DPS on your roster who usually stays on DPS. But that's been happening with other roles as well, We've seen, for example, the Zenyatta role, which is usually what we call like the off healer, right? Not your Mercy or your Anna or your Moiras, but usually the Zenyatta role that's been kind of like that off healer has been switching into off tank fairly often. In the Overwatch League finals case, it was Roadhog a lot of the time that was being brought in, and that role kept changing. We also saw a lot of single healer, which I thought it was really interesting. This new meta where just Mercy can be the single healer that you bring, and then everyone else kind of like revolves around that. It seems to work really well just because of the way the compositions are built. You only have one or two people that are in the front lines at all times with the double sniper, so you can get away with this single healer since your snipers are away from the battle and they can kind of fend for themselves a little bit. And not to mention that your Roadhog can heal himself almost exclusively, so you don't have to worry too much about him. What do you think about this? Because for a long time, bringing out a single healer was like heresy, right? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think honestly, like the single healer working around these given rosters is testament more to what are the other heroes that are played rather than why do we have a lack of healing, if that makes sense. Like looking to see if you have a healer or not, or a second healer or not, is less really what you're looking at here, and more of like how are the other heroes able to self-sustain themselves, or how is Mercy able to survive, right? So you're running usually a Roadhog in this setup, and Roadhogs are incredibly durable. Not only do they have a way to heal, but when they're healing and when they get caught out of position or when they're losing a duel, traditionally they can mitigate the damage and heal simultaneously. And then furthermore, you have heroes like Orisa with double barriers. Typically, they'll put a barrier down and then they'll have the second one ready pretty well quick after that. And they have their gosh dang it, I can't remember the name of the ability where they turn all gold and I know Halt is the one where it like sucks people towards the orb, but I can't remember. Fortify, that's it. Thank you. So Fortify is the way that they can take even half damage when they're going into it, right? So you have these two really, really durable tanks that make up the composition here, and then you're running two snipers where Hanzo has crazy amounts of damage and can do it at any range because he doesn't have any damage fall off, and is incredibly mobile with this new lunge ability that is on this particular patch with the vertical mobility with his climb, and Widowmaker has an 8-second cooldown grappling hook, which we saw get adjusted this last time we talked about the patch, right? So you have these two sniping heroes that have virtually no damage fall off and can position anywhere in the map. As long as they have a sight line of you, they can do damage, and a lot of it.
A lot.
And Mercy has the capability of healing anyone on almost a 2-second cooldown. She can dash anywhere in the map, and basically getting sightlines of anyone as long as everyone's kind of split and with lots of high mobility or adjustments where, Roadhog can hook something, Orisa can kind of provide some space there. You have the Mercy can go and pocket you. You can have Hanzo just turn on a dime, and the Widowmaker can kind of shoot each other perpendicular to provide support without physical presence. You have a lot of utility in order to kind of lay the groundwork for Mercy to be able to do everything that she needs to do. And I think that's kind of the mentality. Now, I could be wrong on this. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying in the mentality of why do you want to run this as well, you only need to run healers as much as you need to stay alive.
Right.
Because if you kill the other team faster and get the objective at the same time and provide the same amount of pressure, then you're going to go without a healer any other way. The only reason teams like New York Excelsior or other team rosters that are running Zenyatas instead of in that second healing role is because Zenyatta pumps out crazy damage and also happens to heal.
Yeah,
right?
And Transcendence can be very, very useful in those cases. Special thanks to Tears of Norris for the Twitch Prime over there. Thank you so much, man. I will say that this composition, it's very interesting, and Spitfire has shown this other side of the tank meta too. So far, Reinhardt had been very, very dominant, especially in the ladder, and here comes Spitfire saying, you know what? we think Orisa is doing a much better job, and they were using Orisa to a whole nother level. I think that it was the unsung hero in a lot of their matches. I wouldn't even say the unsung hero because Gesture, the London Spitfire main tank, was doing such a splash with Orisa right next to his off tank Fury, and even his off healer Bedosin, who were switching into the Roadhog and playing with their Orisa really, really well together. It was really impressive watching them have the timing of the halt down to a science. Basically, Orisa would throw the halt, suck everyone in, and their Roadhog was just ready for it. You would see him standing behind the Orisa constantly, and as soon as that pull would come through, he would just throw his hook, almost like a fishing pole. He would just go fishing in there, and he wasn't even aiming at anyone in particular. It was more of a let's see who shows up. And somebody would get pulled and immediately get hooked, and then their entire team would just focus fire whoever it was. It didn't matter if they hooked the Roadhog, the Orisa, the Mercy, the Zenyatta. Whoever was there and got pulled would die immediately. And it was such a well planned strategy. It worked many, many times throughout all of the matches, and it made the front line of Spitfire incredibly dangerous to the point where not even the Orisa from Philadelphia Fusion could stand safely behind her shield because the halt would just come above her head and suck her above the shield. So not even the barriers would help. Reinhardt wouldn't even help with that either. It was very impressive to watch their use of Orisa.
I think you'll see this most definitely on day 2 if you watch the Junkertown game on game 1. So day 2, game 1, Junkertown. That's where you're going to see this a lot. And this is not just to like harp on how good Gesture was with the London Spitfire playing the Orisa. You're going to actually see this on both ends. Both ends are doing pretty much essentially the same thing and to equal distant effect. And something that I noticed going into this map, and Andres, you can feel free to chime in on this one. I don't think in any stretch of Overwatch League up until this point, we have seen so many plays where it hasn't just seemed like, you're kind of tiptoeing the pressure and going for an opening as much as it was seeing Spitfire and Fusion going in their roster and setting up a play. It's almost like it felt very much like watching an NBA game in basketball where you have like these plays where you go in and you're
Yeah.
kind of informing your decision by what the enemy team is doing, but you have set plays and you have certain things that you're going to do in different scenarios because you just run the drill so many times. You're like, okay, in this scenario, we have a Hanzo ult. So what are we going to do? We're going to set up in this venue, and we know that they have to come in Junkertown through this upper venue. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically use our Widow ultimate to know when they're in there. And then when we know they're in there, we're going to fire both the suck, pull, or whatever, the halt ball from Orisa and the Hanzo dragons into that room. So the second they hear Hanzo saying, the dragon strike can consume my foes, the Orisa's pulling them in there and giving them no other option of escape. And then he gets a 5k and gets the D.Va mech. So you get scenarios for this.
That was actually one of the more impressive plays that happened throughout the tournament. Everyone went nuts in the venue. You could just see everybody devastated first because they really wanted Fusion to be able to push that last little bit and take it to another game. But at the same time, thoroughly impressed. That was such an impressive play because, like you said, they waited for the entire team to funnel into this very tiny corridor. Then Prophet, the Hanzo for Spitfire, just fires the Dragon Strike straight into the corridor, which would have been fine. I think that the majority of them would have been able to get out alive because, you hear the dragon coming, but what they didn't expect was that the halt was coming in with the dragon to basically sucking them in just for enough time for the Dragon Strike to finish them off. A lot of them were so close to escaping, but that halt was just enough to just be like, nope, you're gonna die right over here. And he was very impressive. He got 5 kills out of that, and he was set up by the Orisa. And that's the other impressive thing, the amount of plays that they were setting up with the Orisa halt was very impressive. It was not just the hooks, it wasn't just the Dragon Strike. It was happening with their Diva bombs. It was happening to get them out of position constantly so that their DPS would have just another chance at dealing damage to them. And it was almost
Right.
like they were using it as a mini graviton on like a 10-second cooldown or whatever the cooldown is for the halt. But every time the halt was up, it was an opportunity for them to set up a kill. And they were using it very wisely. And in the context of the team, they were using it in conjunction with so many abilities. And they were landing an incredible amount of kills just from this setup. So I do agree, like you said, it was like plays that they were using constantly, this constantly teamwork and setting up plays for themselves.
Now let's talk about your man Poco, because these diva plays during this entire series, back and forth between Fury and Gesture setting them up on London, and usually Fury is the guy playing diva on London, but Poco is the diva player for um, Philadelphia. And in general, Poco typically would be having the edge, but if you guys want to see some of the craziest diva set plays, you should watch the game 1 finals for day 1. The very first game was just a diva fiesta on the most appropriate map to use the term fiesta, Dorado.
Diva
So
Fiesta, I like it.
this is just the craziest bombs you're going to be seeing. And I'm not even talking like crazy set plays, just the amount of team play around making sure that the diva bombs are getting more than just what they are, which is zoning potential. Because when you play the game at this high level and putting diva bombs in difficult positions where the enemy team has to funnel, you're seeing basically any time that a diva bomb goes off with either of these rosters, the teams are not content with getting the zoning potential. They're not content with getting enough value. They're pushing super hard on their diva players to set up not only the area denial, but making sure that when they're denying space, they're pushing the enemy team into an area where they want them, and then they jump and they take them out. And occasionally, and not even this being an uncommon occasionally, but this being fairly common, the diva bombs are actually the second point of the funneling, where the team is actually pushing them into an area and denying the space by their presence being there, like the Widowmaker and the Hanzo, and then the Winston jumping in, for example, and then the diva setting the bomb where they're going so that they have nowhere to go. Whether they die to the bomb or they die to the enemy team, it doesn't matter anymore in that stretch. But the diva bombs have been some of the best pressure I've seen in the league. Not just because these are, the top 2 teams in the league, but like we've seen this all season long. It's just like kind of come to a climax in this league, especially in that opening day.
Definitely those Diva bombs were game changing in this finals. A lot of them define the points, a lot of them save points just outright by themselves. It was really amazing watching them use it because it's like you said, they were very calculated. You can tell that these two guys have been practicing their Diva locations and their timings a lot of the time, because a lot of the bombs get towards the point that they need to get exactly at the right time so that they explode, covering the biggest area that they can and having the least amount of blind spots that they can find. A lot of the bombs that we saw come out were fired in a way that they would reach angles where even normal hiding spots were not hiding spots anymore. It was like, oh man, this bomb is just gonna explode everywhere. And it was like you were saying, they were very aware of how they would put the pressure to funnel the team into those places so that the Diva bombs would be super effective. It was really fun to watch. And actually, if you're a Diva player, I really recommend watching Poco from the Philadelphia Fusion. That man has those bombs down.
There's also one thing that I didn't really note, which was that when they were playing Oasis, Philadelphia actually had Hotba on playing Diva, which is really interesting to me. And I'm not sure, I can't even remember if I can run this back in my mind if they just didn't have Poco in that match. like that one game, or if they were running 3 tanks and Poco wasn't on the
I
Diva.
think
Which
Poco
seemed,
subs for Hadba. Yeah.
so I think the real issue was that Poco would have only been able to play the one map that they wanted to play that Diva on, and their plans were not to play Diva on the other ones. So, but there was just like this really good situation that we're going to use as a transitional piece here on Oasis when they're playing the map called, let's see, there's City Center, University, and Gardens. There we go, Garden. So they're playing Oasis Garden, and Hotba gets his team in a position where the enemy team has 2 ultimates, and their team has the Diva Bomb as one of their 3 ults. Okay. The enemy's 2 ults consist of at least one of them is on their Mercy player to have Valkyrie. Okay. So London has Valkyrie with Nuss, and Hoppa has Diva Bomb. That's all I can recall in this specific moment. Well, Hoppa gets this crazy play where he delivers the bomb, and the Diva Bomb, while it's flying in, you see Sato playing Winston jump on where the bomb is going to be and jump like just in front of it, so that when he lands on Winston, it pushes Nuss and the on Mercy and the enemy Winston into that bomb, and they instantly detonate. It was just like this crazy set play. So Philadelphia gets in up the fight 4-2, and they lose. They lose the game on this play. And it's not because of the play, but what happens after. And Andres really wanted to try to talk about how well London disengaged after this.
Well, that was an impressive play. Now they bring it up. Yeah, how the Philadelphia Fusion was able to initiate and get a double kill on their main tank and the main healer on London Spitfire. But London was able to come back by a tactical retreat, right? They just retreated real fast to this room where the Brigitte was able to defend the Zenyatta. But the Zenyatta was trapped, but Brigitte, using her shield bash and her whip, was able to kind of like fend off people trying to get to them. And they were able to survive just long enough for their team to be able to come back. And it was an impressive way of switching gears, just watching them go from really offensive and really aggressive to let's get the hell out of here real quick, and them using their abilities very defensively, right? Like the Brigitte wasn't trying to kill anybody, he was just trying to get everybody away from their Zenyatta, and the Zenyatta almost dies in this point, but he's able to just survive long enough. And we gotta remember, this whole time the Zenyatta is putting out damage, right? He is retreating while firing orbs and putting discords. So Philadelphia Fusion actually gets threatened too by just keeping the Zenyatta alive long enough. And then by the time their gesture and Nuss, their main healer and the tank, are able to come back, they're able to resurrect, I think, that the Diva who had just died, and basically bring back the momentum and allow them to stay in the map. It was very cool to watch just how much strategy went into that.
So, Andres, can you break it down a little bit more for us when we're talking about the tactical disengagements that allow the team kind of the ebb and flow, almost like a wave of disengaging and then kind of coming back and hitting twice as hard, just overall with the day 1 and day 2 of the series? Because I know you said that this is kind of a really big thing, big story of the success for London in particular.
I think it's really interesting to watch both teams know exactly when to get aggressive. You brought it up earlier how they would initiate, for example, with a Diva Bomb, but it wasn't just the Diva Bomb going towards them. It was the Diva Bomb and then the entire team just rushing in behind this Diva Bomb and being there to kind of like capitalize on the pressure. Nobody would ever fall behind, and if the front line was compromised, the team would retreat immediately so fast, but not in a frantic way, right? Like they would retreat while watching out after each other. They would put shields on the Mercy. They would um, allow the Brigitte to try to get back. The tanks would fly back towards their backline and try to like the Winston would put down a shield and try to retreat. I thought it was really interesting too the way the momentum would change, because fights were not always very one-sided. Actually, they were very back and forth. Even though London won and they were clearly a very strong team, stronger than Philadelphia Fusion during the finals, Philadelphia still won a lot of fights throughout the entire tournament, and it didn't become like what team can just outright outplay the other team. It was more what team can win more team fights, essentially. And there were a lot of them and a lot of switches in between team fights too, right? When one team would find a good defense against whatever composition one team was using, the other team would eventually swap to something completely different and was able to overrun whatever defense was happening. And this created a very interesting scenario where the teams would choose to defend on very strategic positions. For example, right after a team would win a checkpoint on a payload map, for example, a lot of the teams would get incredibly aggressive on defense right after that checkpoint and would try to hold them in whatever choke point they had at that point for as long as possible, so that even if they lost the team fight, they would have run the clock another 30 seconds, another 40 seconds, and would give him enough time to regroup so that they could try that again in another 2 choke points, maybe before the payload was there. And I thought that was really, really smart of a lot of the teams. You know what I mean? Finding little places in the map to run the clock for as long as they can while keeping themselves or giving themselves the most chances to have as many team fights as possible throughout that period of time. It becomes like another layer of the game, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and I think that you're gonna see a lot of that in Game 3 of Eichenwald on day 1. I feel like that that map Eichenwald is such a crazy setup because of that giant U shape that they have to move outside and how open it is, and how lots of teams, like, as soon as they cap the payload, they just like run to the gates. They're like, "You're gonna stop right here. We're gonna
Mm-hmm.
maintain this position as long as we can." And then when you get into point 3 and everything starts closing down, you see team comps just constantly shuffling on both sides. They're just like trying to get any edge, whether it's a ult economy edge or whether it's a hard counter edge. So I think you brought up a great point, and I want to transition this to more of the hero counters, something that we saw with the success and or detriment to a team in a lot of these matches based on how not only what teams were picking the right heroes or picking heroes that countered the enemy team, but also were actually able to follow up with those counters, because there was times where Spitfire would run the comp that would actually win them the series in game 3 of day 2, but then on day 1 they ran the same thing on the very first game and lost the game. So it's not just the composition, it's not just hard countering, because you can still play around it, right? But we did see, like we said earlier, the highlight, the MVP player, Profit on London Spitfire, switching off of these crazy dominant DPS aim intensive mechanically oriented heroes like Tracer and Genji and Widowmaker and like all of these type of heroes, and then he's just going to go play Brigitte. That is like the stun lock machine, right?
And I think that speaks a lot to the strategy, right? Right now,
Right.
both teams are not really picking heroes because they're the meta or they're like incredibly overpowered. And like some of the compositions do form around like a certain pattern. But even then, in this finals, we saw things like Orisa becoming more prominent than Reinhardt, which we haven't really
Right.
seen so far, right? So meta keeps evolving. And a lot of the heroes that get picked are more to or are more meant to fill specific situations that the team wants to do. Actually, this is a good time to go just map by map and maybe talk a little bit about the strategies that they were using on certain
Sure.
points. Let's start with the first day on Dorado. Point 1 on attack, the single healer, triple tank, double DPS with the Orisa Roadhog is becoming increasingly popular because it allows you to have snipers that can go up into the roofs. You can go around the point and have all these huge sight lines on the enemy team. And then your Orisa Roadhog actually put a lot of pressure on the choke point. You get enough spam with those two, and just being able to have that Orisa hook combo to just get single picks, and your potential to get picks with this composition is super high. And like we said, the snipers can kind of go do their own thing for a little bit without your Mercy worrying too much. It works really well for this point one, and we've seen it with many different teams. Story kind of changes on point two, though. Both teams kind of favor a dive composition a little more. We see Winston and Diva come out in this second point just because both of the bridges become so important to holding the payload, and you can put so much pressure to people who are just standing below on the payload with these, that heroes that allow you to get to the roof and gain the roof really quick. So in this case, Winston and Diva, the double sniper still works really well, as Hanzo and Widowmaker have no problem getting up into a roof and kind of helping out and put the pressure down below. So these heroes are very favored as well.
They favored these heroes so heavily that you would actually see, I can't remember which the player was. It was one of the off tanks was playing Zarya, and they blew a graviton surge just for the sake of zoning on point one, and it looked like it was just like, what is this? Thankfully the casters weren't freaking out about this, even though I was a little bit off on edge, because I was like, this doesn't make any sense. What are they doing? And like instantly after doing this, they went right back into spawn, either after death or even just walking over there just to switch to Winston, because they're like, we got to go dive, we got to go now, otherwise we're going to be, a couple seconds behind the clock on the enemy team. And so they're favoring these time banks over their ultimate economy, which at large, putting you at that disadvantage for playing Zarya for too long could be the win. It could be the loss of the match.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, as a Zarya, for example, you lose a lot of value on that hero in the second point one, because it takes you forever to be able to get to the high ground. If there's a fight in the high ground, you might not even able to put a shield on your target or even help out. By the time you get up there, the fight might be over. And to top it off, even if you have Graviton, which is huge, the value that you can get out of a Graviton when the enemy team is split between the high ground, the low ground, and you have Diva, Winston kind of like flying around everywhere, there's not a lot of options or not a lot of opportunities for you to get a big grab, that's going to suck in 3-4 people. The most that you might be able to get is 1 or 2, and that's just not enough, right? For the time
Especially
commitment.
now after the new changes for Zarya, where the radius is going to be smaller.
Exactly. And if you're having a hard time already getting energy because your shields are not being effective as much, I think that's why heroes like Winston and Diva get prioritized in this one. Story changes in the last point, though. We've actually seen this from other teams like New York Excelsior. London Spitfire pulled it out too. The last point is a point that really favors the defense. And defense, even if you're defending with Reinhardt, with Orisa, you can do it with a double sniper. Genji and Tracer become pretty popular in this one as well. Tracer especially because you can move all over the place and you can contest the payload for your team, no problem. But on attack, the triple tank, triple support becomes super popular because it's a composition that allows your entire team to stand on the payload, and it's a composition that it allows your team to keep everyone off of the payload pretty easy, right? You're talking about bringing out the Brigitte. So you're swapping, like you said, Spitfire was swapping their MVP DPS player, the guy that is a god on Genji, Widow, Hanzo, and they're putting it on that Brigitte because at that time they value the ability to stand on the payload and keep enemies out of the payload more than anything else, right? You have to kind of brute force it to the end, and there's so many ways to stall the payload at that point that you basically want to have as many people close to the payload as you can, keeping off any defenders off, and especially guys like Tracer that can stop the payload and stall it for a really long time. And stalling in this point is crucial because if you can buy 5 more seconds, your team is back and then you're stalling indefinitely and creating this chain stall. So you just want people to be able to stand the payload and be like, nobody's coming here. If Tracer comes, she's gonna get stun locked, thrown out of there. You have 3 tanks that are super beefy and 3 healers that are keeping them alive. So even if they put pressure on them, you're able to top him off really, really, really fast. So that triple tank, triple DPS becoming pretty popular on that last point of the map to kind of like just give that last little bit of power.
Yeah, and not only that, but we're actually seeing some of these picks throughout the match, whether they be optimal or suboptimal, just to counter something else. And while we don't really mention it too much because when you're playing ladder, it's best for in general for players to be playing something they're comfortable even if you're losing these edges that we're talking about, right? Like we're saying maybe you're not going to get as much value as Zarya here. Like as long as you're aware of some of the weaknesses that you have to take when you go into these environments, you should be okay. But again, these are just general broad brush statements when you're playing Overwatch. But like in these team play environments where literally every millimeter matters, these type of scenarios are going to be mattering much more to team rosters when they're picking these things when everyone can play everything at pretty much any level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you're going to be talking about these specific scenarios, and also why you're going to see Prophet switching off to this other hero when you see these Genji specialists like EQO just jump in and they're like, we're going to take the point with the blade. And Prophet's like, well, I'm not going to be able to kind of go toe to toe with you in the same environment, aka playing the Genji to kind of counter the Genji type of idea, but rather he's going to shut him down by using the stun, whether he has a Dragon Blade or not. He's going to make sure that Brigitte's saving the stun for where Genji engages. And you also saw that this map was the story was who got the better Diva Bomb at the right moment, because Nuss got picked off by an aerial detonated Diva Bomb from either Hoppa or Poco. I can't remember who it was, but that literally won them the fight in the
Gotta watch
very
out for
end.
those.
So it was some cool plays.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool plays that happen. I'm kind of gonna skip a little bit of a few maps because we won't be able to talk a lot
Sure.
about those. But I'm just gonna highlight some of the strategies that I thought were really obvious. Teams have favored because they think they're the strongest. Going into Eichenwald, the pharmacy has become almost the preferred method of approaching this map, both on defense and on attack. It's quite interesting that both favor it, and I can see why, especially on that first point, being able to bypass the choke point completely, right? With pharmacy, you don't have to worry about going through those archways that are usually a death trap where Orissas and everyone will be spamming at you. For the attacking team, it's super hard at going through that choke point actually, but with a pharmacy, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You can fly everywhere. It's easy for you to get into that middle point, and then you have that huge pillar that you can rotate around and basically provides 360 cover for you. That you just have to make sure you position yourself opposite from the enemy team and just peek out every once in a while. Fire rockets, damage boosted by your Mercy, incredibly strong. Gives you a huge view of the battlefield. And on defense is the same, right? Just having a person that can spam from up top from that tower and even keep an eye on the pharmacy so that they can kind of watch out after each other. It's also pretty strong. Both teams favoring this strategy both times. I think that not even them, but other teams have also been recognizing this and knowing that the pharmacy is just incredibly strong at that point. Even against Widowmakers, just because there's ways that you can avoid her and kind of come out behind her without her noticing. So even against Widowmakers, pretty strong strategy. What do you think of it?
I think the interesting thing is the effectiveness, like you said, of Pharah on all 3 points. And so a lot of players are, practicing it in all 3 of the areas because you can avoid Widowmaker. But when you get to the city center, when things get real sticky, or not city center, sorry, the garden area, this is
Oh
where
yeah, in
Pharah, I
Oasis
feel like,
is
has the
played quite a bit too.
yeah, but like what I was getting at is that Farah has, I feel like, more of the advantage because the vertical space is
Mm-hmm.
more than the horizontal space. Whereas you get to city center, and I feel like even though you can still abuse those type of things with Farah fairly easily, the Widowmaker still has longer sight lines that she can abuse if the Farah is not careful. So when you shift this again, you have the same scenario on University when you're inside. Farah has a lot of verticality space, but Widowmaker is even more crippled in this space. So you're going to be seeing the triple tank kind of showing up here, and you're going to see Orisa versus Reinhardt being the one deciding factor in a couple of these fights on Oasis in the university, which was real interesting. And Andres and I were watching this even the pre-show again, just seeing, why is this a big deal? Well, running Orisa and Roadhog means that the shields are getting broken incredibly fast, and especially with the damage boosted Pharahs, just causing disruption and shield damage. It's just really, really hard to run a Reinhardt against that because Orisa's just got this constant stream of damage you have to deal with.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about Volskaya. Volskaya was a very interesting point too. I would say one of the most exciting games in the series of day one. If you haven't watched it, I definitely recommend it. Tons of incredible fights, and it was like, man, the Fusion almost held in there until you get to a game five, but London was just too strong. The double sniper definitely coming out into play in this map. They really love the double sniper in Volskaya just because there's so many points where you can easily get to the high ground and find your way around the high ground and overlook the point from there. The double sniper gives you a huge advantage there. I think we saw a lot of Orisa Roadhog coming out again just to get those picks constantly, put that pressure on the shield. That worked out really well.
And a defensive Genji was real interesting coming out on this match.
Yeah, on defense, actually, a few different heroes came out, including a Mei. Mei has been known to be good on 2CP maps just because of your ability to stall and allow your team to come back and run the clock in that sense. But very effective working out. Prophet brought it out, and he did a lot of very cool things with it. Diva bombs being incredibly effective in this map as well. There are a few locations where we saw the Diva bombs do a ton of work. Unfortunately for the Philadelphia Fusion, it was just not enough, right? Just the sheer power of the DPS in the London Spitfire kind of ended up taking this one. But I don't think you had to do much with strategy wise. It was more of, a little bit of an outplay that happened there.
Right.
But definitely,
I think that you're gonna see Prophet on any of the matches that you play in day one. There's literally like a moment in every single map on both attack and on defense where Prophet just goes and stands on his head and just shoots people with his eyes closed. Like, it's just like, how in the fat world did you do that? Like, he just does this in every match. And it's less about how good the team play is in those moments and more about just somebody's like, I'm gonna make the play and here it is. And those things happen. And like, if you're a team and you're just falling apart to those plays, you're just like, damn, that was nice. Let's go back and try to win this. Because those plays aren't, in essence, always going to win you games. And I feel like this is a really good teaching point for us, talking with other players outside of Overwatch League, just in our listener base. When these things happen, so there's some days where you get these guys that are playing Widowmaker or Doomfist or just these super weird heroes in your gold games or your bronze games. You're like, this guy's got to be a Smurf, or this guy is a diamond player in my gold games because it's a 6-stack and they're just trying to boost this guy, and this guy is playing like he's a Grandmaster. Well, he could be, or he could just be having a really good day. Like that. Those moments do happen, and people play out of their minds. And then there's also players that just don't play a whole lot that just happen to be good and are really knowledgeable.
sometimes the stars do align for you in the game, and beautiful things happen. Alrighty.
You want to get into games for day two there, Andres?
Yeah, actually, I just want to talk about one game for day two because I believe that in Junkertown and Legion Tower, a lot of the same strategies and compositions did happen. One thing to note, though, it was never static. Both teams were constantly switching to match what they needed to do, right? If one strategy wasn't working towards one, eventually they would switch, they would do something, and usually end up winning the match, which really showed that kind of like counter rock paper scissor that Overwatch has going on. Even the best teams cannot just stay on the same composition. They were forced eventually to swap and alternate and find their way through, whether it was through hero switching or through approach and positioning or different targeting, but you saw them constantly adapt their strategy, which was really cool to watch. But in day two, King's Row was a really interesting map because when we get to this map, this is the last chance for Philadelphia Fusion to stay in the game. It was like, this is match point. If you lose this, you're done for, you're out. And it was very interesting because when they started, Philadelphia Fusion actually defended incredibly well. I think that at this point they had gotten used to the Orisa Roadhog little strategy that Spitfire had going on. And you were seeing Poco eating a lot of the halts. You were seeing them positioning themselves in a way that the halt was not being as effective. And they were able to kind of like hold them off for quite a bit on that first point. And eventually Spitfire noticed this and realized, one, they're playing really spread out towards where the halt is not getting a lot of value. Two, they're actually watching out for this, so we're not able to get the hooks that we've been wanting to. Even if we've been able to get a kill with it, they've been really proactive and being able to resurrect the kill. Actually, Neptuno was being incredibly aggressive with his resurrects on that last point. He got away with murder a couple of times, just resurrecting.
At least twice.
Yeah, at least twice. Just resurrecting a main tank, kind of like in the front line, saved by barely by like the Orisa shield or something like that.
Yep.
But they were doing good, and eventually Spitfire was like, "This is not working out, guys. We're gonna change this completely." And they went again that triple tank, triple support composition. And it was very interesting in their approach because they didn't just rush the point. They made sure that they went around the hotel all the way above the stairs as a team, all 6 of them, and made sure that they cleared out that back area so that nobody had the high ground advantage above them. And then once they were sure that that was the case, they all would drop into the point as at once, basically forcing Philadelphia Fusion to get the hell out of there because, the crashing wave is coming, the death ball is coming. You can't really just stand there or you'll get eaten up. And
it was
again,
really good strategy too, because not only were they able to maneuver in such a way that they could kind of go around the point, contest people off the high ground, then get to the point, but they were also doing scouting without a Widowmaker ultimate. They're basically saying, look, if something's in here, it's closest to where we have to engage to, and it's the fastest way that if somebody else is out of position, they die.
Yep.
So basically, they're going through these positions where it's the next step that they have to go through, and they park it like very briefly. They make sure it's empty. They go to the next spot. They scout it. They kill everything. They refuel. They go to the next spot. And then they just kind of do this like 3-point strategy where they go from basically from spawn. They wait 2 seconds of walking. They speed boost through the hotel and into the point to kind of bring people out to kind of see where they are. Then they go back in through the other side of the hotel, the second hotel, sorry. And then they go upstairs and they kill the Orisa and then they drop on the point, and that's the match. Or that's the point, and then they start pushing payload for strategy number 2.
Yeah, and it was really interesting too because as a team, the Spitfire didn't have to get that many kills. What it came down to was that once they got to the point and they were standing on the point, because they're death ball and they're so resistant, the double sniper, I think that's what they were running as a double sniper that Philadelphia Fusion was running, could just
Hanzo
not
Widow,
get any kills. You know what I mean? It was just like they were able to stand on the point for so long while not dying, even though Philadelphia Fusion was constantly shooting at them. It was like the heroes that they had chosen were just compositionally more effective at doing that particular job, right? Contesting the point. And because they did the switch so fast and at the same time, Philadelphia Fusion had no time to answer, right? Like they were countering a different composition, and once the Spitfire like changed it so fast, it was like, man, we just don't have the effectiveness to get him off the point, to put the pressure to push him away.
It's just so jarring for you to set up for so long or like be holding something and against a strategy that keeps pushing up against you. You're just like ready for it. And then you brace for something that's not coming. Your team is just sprawling automatically. And it really speaks not only to the effectiveness of switching, but also the effectiveness of London being able to not only make the switches that they want to do, but be able to shift gears mentally and mechanically to play that in such a excellent and just the level of expertise in order to like switch gears
Yeah,
so quickly.
recognizing the strengths and the weaknesses of the composition that Spitfire is running, and then using those weaknesses to get the point without even having to win the fight. Eventually, through
Right.
through attrition, the Spitfire was able to kill a bunch of them, and they ended up
Hmm.
winning the point. But it was more because of the fact that the fight was prolonged for so long, and the fusion was forced to make mistakes to try to put pressure on them. Right now, you're trying to play your Widowmaker a little bit less effectively, or Hanzo less effectively, because you're having to get it into crazy risky angles to even get any value out of you, right? Like you have shields, you have giant bodies that you're not able to one shot at once, that are covering also some of the supports. And even though you're one of the best shots in the world, as Carpe is, at Widowmaker, you're just not able to find that value.
And it's really interesting too to see. I to kind of close up here, I feel like we've been talking a lot about these teams, and I wanted to highlight a little bit more because I feel like any team wins, you typically talk about them the most, but you don't really talk too much about the losers and how well they were performing, or rather even just like what went wrong. Because I feel like those are the normal things. It's like, well, they didn't play that bad, and here's why, or they did play that bad, and here's why. You know what I mean? But like Carpe is such a polarizing effect on this team that is just really interesting. And Carpe plays the Widowmaker and the Tracer, and he also played Doomfist in a match, which was pretty hype
Actually,
actually.
it
It
was
was
this match.
insane. It was this one.
It was the Philadelphia Fusion response to this triple tank, triple support after they lost point one to the strategy that they couldn't counter with their snipers. Carpe goes on and switches to Doomfist, I think for the first time ever that we've actually seen him play Doomfist
In pro games,
live.
yeah.
Yeah, and funny enough, the next fight,
3 Ks
Carpe gets
right
like
away.
3 kills immediately, because now you're playing with a hero that can do a lot of damage to a composition like that, right? A hero that can just slam and hit 4, 5 people with one slam, do massive damage, then uppercut 2 or 3 of them, punch him,
Yep.
and the punch does damage through shields. Like there's no blocking that punch. You know what I mean? If it hits you, it hits
Hmm.
you. So suddenly that hero made a lot of sense, and they end up losing the map eventually, but they won that first fight when they chose to counter the
Right,
Doomfist
exactly.
with the
And
Doomfist.
yeah, precisely. And the crazy thing again, like I was getting at with Carpe being such a polarizing effect on this team, it's not so much the polarizing like if he's not performing then the team's losing. The difference that I'm really trying to get at is when Carpe gets something, it's almost like it ignites something in the other teams that you don't really get with other rosters. It's like when Carpe gets a pick, the entire momentum of the game is out the window, and the entire Philadelphia Fusion roster is gone. You know, like they're gone, and all of their instincts are on all 5 cylinders, and they are just pushing in, and something's dying next. And the crazy thing is, a lot of times if that momentum hits and Carpe's a part of it, instead of the other 5 people taking advantage of a Carpe pick or a Carpe kill, Carpe's usually the one finishing the stuff off, and he's the one taking the spotlight full on. You know what I mean? Like he's the one who's getting like 3 Ks or 2 Ks, like with the Doom play fist play. Like he's like, I'm gonna kill you, and then I'm gonna kill your friend, and then I'm gonna kill your other friend. And it's just like he's just like a mafia mobster, man. And like when he's not doing that and other teammates on the roster like EQO are performing, if the enemy or if his allies are kind of like starting the snowball, it just feels slower. You know what I mean? Like when Carpe is the one initiating and spearheading these picks and and enabling his team to have a man advantage, you're seeing the team actually do something about it when Carpe does it.
Hmm.
Whereas like when EQO did it especially on his debut, EQO just goes in and does it himself. You know what I mean? Um,
I can see what you're saying.
and it's kind of an odd observation and not necessarily like a strategic point, but I just thought it was really intriguing to kind of see how his team fed off of that energy.
Absolutely. I guess the last thing I wanted to mention too before we close out is Hanzo in particular and how he's getting used. We're so used to Hanzo in the ladder being the Hanzo Zarya combo. We get a damage boost in, which is not even a thing anymore because they took that away.
Hmm.
But it's still kind of this preconception that it has to be this huge play that, when you get your ultimate. The way that we saw it being used in the league was actually really interesting because they were using it very willy nilly. I know people give me crap for using the word willy nilly on Twitter, but hey, it's my word. Anyway, they just use it all the time. As soon as they get it, they try to get value out of it immediately. And it makes sense because the ultimate itself and the way that they're using it almost like as a divider, especially on maps like King's Row, which are, a lot of thin corridors and hallways, and you can really trap people in there with the ultimate. With some just getting thrown to divide the enemy team in half to maybe block the front line to be able to retreat. As soon as your team was moving forward, you can block, wherever they need to go and just trap the Reinhardt, trap the Orisa, divide the team so your healers can't really cross that dragon to help him and being able to like get him out of the way. Or just if you saw them in a trapped kind of in a room or in a corridor, just throw it through there with a sonic arrow and get value out of that. But a lot of the times they were not even running a Zarya to pair up with the Hanzo. It was just this massive zoning death machine that they were using. And I thought that it was a really creative use. Both teams were using it the same way, and it was very, very few times that they use it as a setup play, except for London Spitfire, Notorious, Orisa hauled into the dragon. But aside from that, it was very just by itself. You know what I mean?
And I definitely I like this mentality that they're doing with the dragon, because you at this level, Hanzo, regardless of who's playing it, whether it's like some tank player just playing Hanzo because they want to, even on ladder because they're a grandmaster, like top 500 owl player, Hanzo gets his ult so freaking fast
Very
that
fast.
burning it and doing nothing with it is still better than like sitting on it for 5 minutes in a lot of ways, because even if you're getting no kills with it and it's not really doing anything, you're still able to just shut something down, like the area, right? Or you're splitting the team. It's effectively a May wall super ability, but if they happen to be near the wall, they die. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of that type of mentality, at least for a short time. And you were seeing where there's a lot of dragons that were kind of actually the majority of them, like Andres was saying, if they're worked as either a divider or a funnel. You're basically pushing the enemy team to say you're not going here, or they're pushing the enemy team with the dragon and saying you have one option to escape, and that's where my team is going,
Yep.
and you're not allowed out. And so
Basically.
they're just going to do that every time. And it's not even a set play.
No, yeah, it's just
So,
kind of like it happens when it happens, right? When you see the
right.
opportunity, you're launching it out there. And I like it because Grav Dragon takes a lot of setup. Like two people have to get ultimates, and especially on ladder. Sometimes that Grav takes a minute to come online, right? And then sometimes you have to wait. You're kind of like off of sync.
Yeah.
And in ladder especially, it's hard to communicate that kind of interaction, and it's a huge buildup for this huge payoff that if it doesn't work out, then you've kind of like committed a lot of time and effort into this. So I kind of
Yeah.
like using the dragon a little bit more freely whenever you have it. And if you happen to have it
Sure.
with a Zarya ultimate, hey, great. But
Great.
honestly, you can get value out of a Graviton in so many ways. You don't actually need a Hanzo ult every time.
Yeah, and I'm definitely excited to see what happens with the next step of Overwatch League. And if you guys are looking for more professional Overwatch and you've watched these VODs 10 times now, that's great. There's a thing called Overwatch League Contenders, and they don't have an off season. So you can go watch pro players play. And especially the pros that are not of our age, but are incredible players like your boy Flower, who is 17, or maybe you're a Zerg fan, who's a guy who's like 16 years old and in contenders because he can't sign a contract yet legally. Like you're seeing these crazy strong players in Overwatch League contenders, and please go watch them. Especially now that Overwatch League is closed, I feel like this should be the big surge that we're looking for with the B League. This is your moment, B League. Like we want to get people to push through that. We want to watch good Overwatch, and people are itching for it even a week after the finals if they have their weeks off. It's always going. It's all regions all the time. So special thanks to all those guys out there that are doing the production. I know that they're going to try to do some improvements. I know Andres is pretty hyped because there's some whispers that Atlanta's going to get a roster. So Andres is not going to be jumping bandwagon. He's going straight over to his team. So that's pretty nice.
No more flip flopping for me. Now I got my team.
Yep. Yeah, you got to commit. I was pretty excited to see not only the universal statement true, which is if a team performs throughout the regular season at number one, it's very rare that they win the whole thing. Actually stick. I wish I was on a podcast to say something like that with some of our friends, but schedules don't allow for that when you live in Japan, apparently. But I do feel for our mourning friend, the Blevins, on his team losing, and I definitely mourn the teams that I like as well as Deathblow because they're all the same. So if you guys are looking for some high-level Overwatch, definitely recommend this as far as just watching individual heroes or practicing watching the heroes adjust when they see things in the kill feed, or just seeing how fast things happen in high-level Overwatch is a time in and of itself. We have some people to thank and also some recommendations for helping us with our show. I'd like to thank those of you who have submitted iTunes review up until this point. It has been a long, long journey, and this is episode 113. So we've had quite a few Overwatch iTunes reviews over the years, and if you guys can spare some time, log into iTunes. It'd help us out. Also, we have some Diamond sponsorships to thank. We have on patreon.com/Omnic Lab that these guys are actually sponsoring us to make the show. They submit a certain amount and they get their names read off on every episode. And these guys are doing the heavy lifting to get us to BlizzCon, especially me, because I should have booked my flight back in April because now I'm paying for it, quite literally. So, man, I'm excited, though. I got my BlizzCon ticket is waiting for me, and we have applied for media passes. And I believe Mel is actually set up our room, and I just bought my plane ticket, so we are good to go.
Yeah,
as
I think
far as
so.
all things are concerned.
I think everything's moving forward. You know, as long as everything stays the same, we should be at BlizzCon this November.
So if you guys will be there, let us know. We're going to be starting, I think, in August is my task to start setting up some channels and working with our mods and admin to give people a specific role for BlizzCon. If you will be there, you will have access to a BlizzCon sharing channel so that you can find us and we can talk and do the meetups and all that jazz. And there'll be a few other people in other Discords doing this as well, but we just want to make sure you had a central location. So, who is helping us get there? We have Ben K, Britmus, Chris DePlaya, Durandal, Golden Soldier A, Jan Jinkle of the Red Steak Sauce Podcast, Lissum, Never Clutch, Ray, Roger B, Ricky Tiki, Shazir, Terry F, Top Score Solutions, Tragic Zach, and new Zachary O. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. If you want to support us at any level, we actually have a really cool announcement regarding our Patreon. Andres and I are doing some new stuff where we're going to be, if you're at any level on Patreon, we're going to try to roll out some new things. Maybe like more personal things. Like Andres and I will try to get together and just talk about 10, 20 minutes about what our weeks are like or what our months are like. We're going to talk about what are we doing in Overwatch? What are we doing outside of Overwatch? We're just going to be talking about when a patch hits in like 24 hours. We're going to try to put something up, one or both of us, in a video and just reactions, like real live, raw footage. And there's some other cool stuff that we have in the works. So if you want to sign up on Patreon at any level, you can get access to that content.
Absolutely. We want to offer some more stuff to you guys that have been supporting us for so long. And I know that some of you guys are interested in stuff that is not necessarily part of Overwatch, right? Like if you are interested in how we make the show, for example, or what we do in our lives other than, make the shows and are interested in that sort of thing and want a more of a
Mm.
scoop in how that goes. We kind of want to open up to yourselves a little more than that. So if you guys have any ideas or actually have any questions to us and would like something like that, let us know. We're open to ideas. I think that for now we'll just start with some stuff about how we go along our days, how we make the show, what we do outside of it to give you guys a little bit of idea. So if you're a patron, look
Sure.
up for more exclusive content like that. We'll be trying to do with guests as well to give you more of an inside scoop on their own stuff too. So it'll depend on the guest, of course, but in general, we just want to provide some more content for you guys that have been supporting the show for so long and have been so kind to us. We really appreciate it, and we just want you guys to know that we don't take that for granted, and we want to keep improving it and keep making it better for you guys.
Absolutely. If you guys want to join in these conversations, you can head over to discord.me/omniclab or omniclab.com/links to get a link to the Discord. There's a special channel for patrons to submit any questions they'd like to us and have it in a channel where only other patrons and the hosts and the mods admin can hear you. If you guys can send us any message you'd like there or on an omniclabpodcast@gmail.com. You can submit anything you'd like through Twitter, any questions. And generally, Discord's the way to go because we got mods and admin when Andres and I are around to answer pretty much any of the normal questions that you may have. And our mods and admin are fantastic. I'd also like to specially thank Silver, Loki, and Icy Sorrow this month for putting on the game night. Even though I was not able to spend most of the time in the game night, I was able to participate, and it went pretty much as smoothly as it normally does. And it may be better in some senses because Andres and I typically tolerate a lot of more craziness in general just because we like seeing so many people in the Discord. So special thanks to you guys for keeping things organized and fun. If you guys want to join in the next game night, it will be at the last Friday of August, which I'll go ahead and announce because it's the 31st. We will try to make that our target date as we do every month, which is the last Friday. If you guys want to find anything else, omniclab.com/links. That's going to do it for the show links. If you guys want to find us, you can find Andres over at...
You can find me on Twitter over at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games. And you can also find me over at Our Recap with Bob and Mel, talking all about Overwatch League. I know that you guys heard a lot of Overwatch League today, but over there we focus a little bit more on the players, coaches, and that sort of interaction, a little bit less on the strategy, even though we do touch it from time to time. So if you'd like to hear all about that and how the teams ended, a few of the news coming out of Overwatch League at the end, you can stay tuned to that. We also have a very special audio collage coming out. We were able to hang out with a lot of our fans, a lot of other content creators like Frito and Eddie from your Overwatch. So really cool stuff. We got to get him on the record too. So stay tuned for that. A very cool episode straight from New York.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram with the tag NotRob. I got a new figurine in the background here. You can't really see it. There it is. There's a gigantic Goku figure I got in a secondhand shop. You guys can see silly stuff every day like that for Instagram. If you guys want to follow anything else, especially with the game Hearthstone, we have a new Boomsday expansion coming out fairly soon, probably next week actually, and there's a new announcement stream this week about it. We'll be talking about those cards. I'm actually going to be staying up late tonight, my time, early morning for you guys to post the show for Velen's Chosen podcast. If you like listening about D&D content, I talk about it with my wife on Concept Craft podcast about once a month. We'll see you guys next week. Remember, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. Tune in next week. There's a possibility we could have a guest on next week. We'll see you guys then. Bye.
Oop.
There we go.
I don't know, what was that about? Thanks to everyone in the chat. You guys were super awesome today. Thanks for all the Twitch primes. We really appreciate that. You guys make it happen too. We're slowly growing the Twitch, so every time you guys donate a little bit to that, it helps us with that too. We have a modest little Twitch. Mr. Mars, Tears of Norris, Gashazir, Big Hockey.
I have nothing more to teach you. The rest you must learn for yourself. Walk in harmony, my
thanks to you, Mr. Sadistic. Thanks for the sponsorship too. Really appreciate it. I am not sure if you can sub on the mobile app.
Yeah, I don't
Big
know.
hug.
I don't have Twitch Prime, so I don't know how to do it.
You might have to have an account too for that to be able to appear. The button usually appears in the top hand corner once you're logged in. I've never tried it from the phone either, so I wouldn't know what to tell you there. But if you do find the button, we will really appreciate it. Even just trying to do it means a lot to us. Thank you for trying. We're gonna close it out here, guys. Thanks everyone for coming, and you'll have a good day.
Jazz hands. Bye.